AM 1430 KRGI 105.5 FM. Good morning. I'm Brian Gallagher. This is Community Connection. It's brought to you by Cornhusker Toyota Honda, Nebraska's only combined Toyota Honda dealership. Thursdays, we turn our focus to education. Here on behalf of Grand Island Public Schools, the Director of Strategic Communications, Mitch Roush. He's got that all across his stocking cap. That used a lot of thread.
A lot of thread. Yeah, it's a long job title.
We're going to talk about something they've got going on new, and of course the annual report, which talks about things that have gone on. You start to look ahead, but there's also going to be a look at alumni. So we've got a few things to go over. First, let's talk about the new podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Brian, also, it's been a while since we've hung out. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. He is bedecked in Islander purple today.
That's right. Islander purple. Gotta love it. The podcast. For a couple of months now, we've had a brand new podcast that we've launched with the school district. It's called the GIPS Cast. And you can find it on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whole nine yards. Or you can catch all of our episodes on our website at gips.org. But that has been one of the new storytelling avenues that we've kind of dipped our toe in the water on for the school district.
Podcasts can be highly addictive.
Yes, absolutely. Especially for commuters, right?
Yeah. So as you talk about this, do you feel that it is a good tool to help people really gain an understanding of the width and breadth of the life at GIPS?
That's the $1 million question. And I think that's honestly why we started it, is to try to see if this is an interesting opportunity to provide some longer form intel to the meaningful work and maybe sometimes often overlooked or complicated work that's going on in the school district. As you know, podcasts give you an opportunity to be a little bit more long form. We try to have our episodes be somewhere in the 20 to 30 minute range, but that gives you a unique opportunity to really sit down with folks and have a conversation about maybe some work that people are interested in, but maybe a little bit more complicated or a little bit more nuanced that's kind of hard to understand in a 2-minute soundbite. So really what we've been doing so far is we've been, having teachers or administrators come in and sit down and talk about some of the cool stuff that they've been doing with some of the programs they have. Most recently, we had Dr. Danielle Berman, who is our curriculum coordinator for math in the entire school district. We had her and one of our elementary school teachers, Danielle Dudo, who's a 4th grade teacher at Newell. They sat down with me and had a half-hour conversation about what does it look like to actually implement math curriculum in the school district. And they were able to talk about it from a district perspective as well as a classroom perspective, and then talk about what that means with things like state standards, how we want our students to grow in the future, and things like that. Obviously, with something like math education and standards, that's something that lends itself to a little bit more of an easier conversation to have over the course of 20 minutes rather than 2 or 5. So that's just one example of how the GIPS Cast, our podcast, is attempting to share maybe a deeper look into some of the more neat but complicated things going on in the school district.
Conversations about curriculum and activities. What a concept.
Right?
Well, but if you think about it, you mentioned key words, in depth, getting into really, the old term was drilling down.
Sure.
It's really trying to find out about roots. You find out about the growth. You find out about all of the things that have to happen for it to be successful. Mm-hmm. And once it is successful, then people go, okay, now I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, this is an opportunity for us, we feel like, to just be a little bit more proactive and just sharing, what are we doing here? And anybody that's interested in learning about those sorts of things or just simply hearing more from the voices of the people doing the meaningful work here, I think that's always going to be a positive thing. I'm always going to be a proponent of, if you want to hear about the cool stuff going on in the school district, I want to put the microphone in front of a teacher. I want to put the microphone in front of a curriculum coordinator or an activities coach or even a student that's done something really, really neat, because they're the ones doing the meaningful work and growing and learning and doing.
Mitchell Roush is the Director of Strategic Communications. We're talking about their new podcasts. Something that isn't new, but it's important stuff, is the annual report. Now, you're featuring some alumni. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. So we're bridging these two things together because we're going to try to implement a cool interactive piece to the annual report. People that have been in the community for a long time or close followers or families of the school district know that we release an annual report every year. Part of being a public education education entity is we are legally required to publish a public report of some kind that goes through things like budget, state standards, a snapshot of where the school district is and everything like that. And we always want to try to take that as an opportunity to do some storytelling and humanization as well too, because if we're going to be coming to your mailboxes with the report, we want to make sure you get a really good snapshot of what's going on in the school district. Part of what we always do in the annual report is we like to feature voices and stories from alumni of Grand Island Public Schools. You know, folks that have gone through the system and done some really cool things beyond GIPS and made a positive impact in their community. So one thing we're going to be doing this year is I sat down and had different interviews with some notable alumni from GIPS, and we did podcast episodes with them. And we're going to be publishing them in January, and then in the annual report, you'll get a cool little shout out of these alum and a little brief description of their story and a link and a QR code you can scan, and it'll take you directly to the podcast, and you can get the longer form conversation with them to hear their story and hear the cool stuff that they're doing in their careers.
That sounds exciting. And with the QR code, how easy can that be?
Super easy. So QR code, you just have one of those QR code readers on your smartphone, and it'll take you right there. Or if you want to subscribe to the GIPS Cast, you can do that on whatever favorite podcast platform you have. Again, if you've got a podcast player on your phone, or if you have Apple Podcasts or Spotify or something like that, you can subscribe. But we talked to some really cool alum. We talked to Peter Palermo. He was the Gish class of 1983, and he is the executive director of the Sheldon Arts Foundation in St. Louis, Missouri. And he's been working in the performing arts field for over 30 years. And I had a great conversation with him just about what is it like to work in a professional performing space, to put together art exhibits, and what does it look like to champion art and creativity in a community. I spoke with Ben Pankinen, who's Gish class of 1998, and he is the CEO of Class Intercom, and that is a social media management platform designed to champion school storytelling. And Class Intercom is currently serving 800 schools in 10 different countries. And Ben had the nicest things to say about his experience in GIPS and talked an awful lot about how that helped him, spark his creativity and his interest in technology. We talked to Jocelyn Rainier. She actually lives here locally. She's from the Gish class of 2014. She works with the YWCA and Leadership Unlimited, and she's won some notable impact awards here in the community and does some advocacy work. So it'll be really cool to get to hear the stories about people doing meaningful things in their community after they left GIPS.
So that'll be in the new annual report.
Yep.
And how soon do you see that coming out, realistically?
Yeah, so we're aiming for end of January, maybe early February for that publication to hit mailboxes.
All right, so anything else we need to sneak up on them and get them ready for the new year? Or?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, classes start back up next week. Kiddos come back to class on Tuesday next week, I believe, and we'll be ready just to continue to do meaningful things.
I do have one other question. Of course, there's a transition coming.
Yeah.
Dr. Grover has decided to pursue other opportunities.
Yes.
So as far as the early stages of a successor for the superintendent's role, what is the current status, and what do you see moving to in the next few weeks?
Sure thing. So obviously that's the big question right now, and there's a lot of moving parts in that particular piece. So what we're looking at right now is next Thursday, January 5th, there's going to be a special board meeting, and that will be an opportunity for the newly elected Board of Education members to get sworn in to start serving their time on the board. And then that is going to kick off their formal process of what it will look like to find an interim superintendent, and then identify a timeline of what they're kind of looking at for in terms of when they think they're going to need to hire a permanent superintendent. So there hasn't been a ton of movement yet because we really wanted this new Board of Education to, be fully on board, fully into the positions that they have, because they're the ones that are going to be making this decision. And so that's what the process is going to look like. We are going to be looking for, it's my understanding, we're going to be looking for an interim superintendent so we can continue to have a leader here at the school district, while then the board takes the time that it needs to find a solid permanent candidate here for Grand Island Public Schools.
So the transition has begun.
The transition has begun.
Gotcha. Mitch Roush, Director of Strategic Communications for Grand Island Public Schools. Thanks for the update. Sounds like great work so far. Keep it up, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, Brian. Thank you.
Good morning from AM 1430 KRGI 105.5 FM.